The detection systems went crazy at 0600 hours on a Tuesday morning. Every radar, every satellite, every tracking station on Earth suddenly locked onto the same thing. Something massive had just appeared in orbit, and it hadn't traveled there. It had simply materialized, like someone flipping a light switch in the darkness of space. The ship was enormous. Later, scientists would calculate it was nearly 3 miles long, built from some kind of crystalline material that seemed to shift colors in the sunlight. It hung there above North America, silent and waiting. Within minutes, every major government on Earth was on emergency calls. Within an hour, the ship began broadcasting. The message came through on every frequency humans had ever used. Radio, television, internet, even old emergency broadcast systems that hadn't been touched in decades. The voice was translated into every language simultaneously, cold and mechanical, speaking with absolute authority. People of Earth, I am High Commander Vorth of the Sovereign Collective. Your planet has been selected for integration into our domain. You have 72 hours to surrender your weapons, disband your militaries, and accept collective governance. Failure to comply will result in the complete sterilization of your world. This is not a negotiation. This is an inevitability. Then the ship transmitted images. Planets burning. Cities reduced to ash. Species that had resisted, now extinct. The collective had been doing this for centuries. They showed Earth their fleet. 10,000 warships waiting just beyond Pluto, each one capable of cracking a planet's crust. 47 civilizations had faced the same choice. All 47 had surrendered. The collective had never lost a war. They had never even been challenged. Panic spread across Earth like wildfire. Some governments wanted to surrender immediately. Others wanted to fight. Religious leaders prayed. Scientists calculated impossible odds. Parents held their children tight and wondered if they'd see another sunrise. The news networks ran nonstop coverage, showing the alien ship on every screen, counting down the hours until humanity's deadline. But behind closed doors, in a bunker deep beneath the Atlantic Ocean, Earth's military leadership was making very different plans. Admiral Emily Grant sat at the head of the table, a woman in her 50s with gray streaking through her dark hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. She'd served in 3 different wars before humanity even knew aliens existed. Now she commanded Earth's unified defense force. They think we're primitives, she said, looking at the other officers around the table. They think we'll roll over and beg for mercy. General Tyler Briggs, head of Earth Space Forces, pulled up a holographic display. They've analyzed our public military, our registered ships, our known bases, our declared weapons. They counted 3,000 vessels and decided we're not a threat. Good, Emily said simply. Let them keep thinking that. The collective demanded a formal response. They wanted Earth's leaders to appear before them, to bow and accept their terms. So Emily went. She took a shuttle up to their crystalline ship, walked through corridors that seemed to hum with alien energy, and stood before High Commander Vorth. He wasn't what she expected. Most aliens in the movies looked somewhat human, but Vorth was truly alien. His body was covered in segmented armor plating. His face had too many angles, and his eyes glowed with a faint purple light. He towered over her, nearly 8 feet tall, and when he spoke, his voice echoed in the chamber. "You are the representative of Earth?" he asked, sounding almost amused. "Admiral Emily Grant." "Yes." "Admiral." Vorth made a sound that might have been laughter. "A military title. How quaint. Tell me, Admiral, has your species decided to accept the inevitable? Will you surrender your weapons and spare your people unnecessary suffering?" Emily looked up at him without flinching. She'd stared down warlords and dictators. She'd given orders that sent thousands to their deaths. This alien, for all his power, didn't frighten her. "We have decided," she said calmly. Earth's answer is no. The chamber fell silent. Vorth's officers looked at each other in confusion. In 300 years, no species had ever refused them. "You do not understand," Vorth said slowly as if speaking to a child. "Refusal means death, not just for your military, but for every human on your planet. We will burn your cities. We will poison your oceans. We will ensure that nothing remains but dust and memory." Emily smiled then, and it wasn't a pleasant smile. It was a smile of someone who knew something you didn't, someone holding a secret weapon. "You should have studied us more carefully," she said. "You should have looked beyond our technology and examined our history. You would have learned that humans don't surrender. We fight. We've been fighting for 10,000 years, and we've gotten very, very good at it." She turned and walked toward the exit. "This is insane." Vorth called after her. "You are committing suicide." Emily stopped at the doorway and looked back one last time. "Maybe," she said. "Or maybe you just made the biggest mistake in collective history. I guess we'll find out in 72 hours. She left Vorth standing there, confused and angry, while Earth's countdown clock continued ticking toward zero. The 72 hours passed slowly for Vorth. He spent them in his command chamber, reviewing every piece of data the collective had gathered on humanity. Something about Admiral Emily Grant's confidence bothered him. No species facing extinction smiled like that. No leader walked away from certain death with such calm certainty. His intelligence officers had compiled thick reports on human civilization. The facts seemed straightforward enough. Humanity had discovered faster-than-light travel only 80 years ago, practically yesterday in galactic terms. They had colonized just 24 star systems, tiny outposts scattered within 100 light-years of Earth. Their registered military consisted of 3,000 ships, most of them outdated designs that any collective vessel could destroy in seconds. But then there was their history. Vorth read through the files late into the night cycles. Humans had been killing each other for 10,000 years, not just defending themselves, actively inventing new and better ways to wage war. They had developed nuclear weapons and actually used them on their own species. They had fought 2 massive global wars within 30 years of each other. They had never known true peace, just pauses between conflicts. "Commander," one of his officers interrupted his reading. "We've completed our final scans of Earth system. No hidden defense platforms. No cloaked minefields. No planetary shields. They appear to have made no defensive preparations whatsoever." Vorth frowned. None, sir. Their colonies are equally undefended. It's as if they've simply accepted their fate." But Vorth couldn't shake the memory of Emily Grant's smile. He ordered additional scans, deeper probes, looking for anything his sensors might have missed. The results came back the same. Earth was completely vulnerable. Her colonies were exposed. The human fleet was scattered across their territory, too far apart to mount any coordinated defense. "Perhaps they truly are suicidal," his second-in-command suggested. "Some species prefer death to submission." "Perhaps," Vorth said, but he didn't believe it. When the deadline expired, he gave the order anyway. The collective fleet began its advance, 10,000 warships moving in perfect formation toward Earth. They came in waves, their crystalline hulls reflecting the light of Sol, humanity's sun. It was meant to be overwhelming, a display of such massive force that any last-minute resistance would crumble into despair. The human colonies didn't even try to evacuate. Space stations continued their normal operations. Cargo ships flew their regular routes. It was eerie, like watching a civilization that had already accepted death. Vorth's fleet reached Mars orbit. Still nothing. No response from Earth. No final plea for mercy. No desperate last stand. The silence was deafening. "All ships, prepare to engage," Vorth commanded. "Target Earth's major population centers first. Make it quick." His weapons officers powered up the planet crackers, massive energy cannons that could turn continents into molten glass. They locked onto targets: New York, Beijing, London, Moscow, Mumbai. Cities that would become memories in the next few minutes. Then every communications channel erupted with a single transmission from Earth. Just 3 words, spoken in Emily Grant's voice: "Activate protocol, Nightfall." For a moment, nothing happened. Vorth's sensors showed no change. Then the darkness itself seemed to come alive. The civilian space station orbiting Mars wasn't a civilian station. Its outer hull split apart like a flower blooming, revealing a weapons platform bristling with missile batteries and energy cannons. It opened fire before Vorth could even process what he was seeing. The cargo hauler passing near his flagship wasn't a cargo hauler. Its entire freight section detached, and what remained was a warship, sleek and deadly, already launching fighters. All across human space, the transformation began. Mining stations revealed hidden gun emplacements. Transport vessels shed their disguises. Even small personal shuttles suddenly sprouted weapons and joined the fight. Everything humanity had built in space was a weapon in disguise. But that was just the beginning. Earth's moon, that dead gray rock that had hung in Earth's sky for billions of years, cracked open, not from an attack. From within, massive doors, each 1 mile wide, slid apart along the lunar surface. The moon wasn't solid. It was hollow. Humanity had been excavating it for decades, turning it into the largest shipyard in known space. From that darkness, they came. Warships poured out of the moon like angry hornets from a disturbed nest. Thousands of them, then tens of thousands. They were painted black, absorbing light rather than reflecting it, making them hard to track against the void of space. Each one was different, designed for specific roles, built with technologies a collective had never seen before. Vortha's sensors struggled to count them. 3,000 became 10,000. 10,000 became 20,000. The numbers kept climbing. 30,000 warships, each one crewed and ready for battle. Each one carrying weapons that humanity had designed specifically for this moment. Impossible, Vorth whispered. Our intelligence was wrong, his tactical officer said, voice shaking. Sir, they hid an entire fleet. They've been building in secret for decades. Admiral Emily Grant's face appeared on every screen, broadcasting both the collective fleet and Earth below. She stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Indomitable, surrounded by crew members who looked calm and determined. You came to our home expecting submission, she said. You studied our technology and found us wanting. But you forgot to study the most important thing about humanity. We are survivors. We are fighters. And we never, ever stop preparing for war. She leaned forward, her eyes hard as steel. Welcome to Earth, Commander Vorth. Let me show you what happens when you threaten humanity's children. The Black Armada surged forward, and the real battle began. The first wave of collective ships moved into attack formation with absolute confidence. They had done this 47 times before. The routine was always the same, advance in perfect geometric patterns. Overwhelm the enemy with superior firepower, accept their surrender within hours. Their shields could withstand anything primitive species could throw at them. Their weapons could vaporize capital ships with single shots. Commander Vorth watched from his flagship as the forward elements closed within firing range of Earth's Black Armada. He expected the humans to scatter, to panic, to realize the futility of resistance. Instead, they accelerated directly toward the collective vessels. Sir, they're not even trying to evade, his tactical officer said, confused. Fools, Vorth muttered. Open fire. Put them out of their misery. The collective's energy cannons lit up space with brilliant blue light. Direct hits on multiple human ships. Shields flared and collapsed. Hull armor melted. But the ships didn't stop. They kept coming, streaming past the first line of fire like they didn't care about the damage. Then the humans opened fire back. The first thing Vorth noticed was the drones. Thousands of them, each no bigger than a fighter craft, swarmed out of the human ships like angry insects. But these weren't normal drones. They moved with purpose, with intelligence, adapting their flight patterns in real time to avoid collective fire. They targeted weak points in the crystalline hulls, places where sensors and weapons connected to main structure. One of his destroyers took a dozen drone impacts and simply went dark. No explosion, just dead in space, all systems offline. What happened to the Vengeance? Vorth demanded. Unknown, sir. Their hull is intact, but nothing's responding. It's like someone flipped a switch and the destroyer exploded, not from outside damage, but from within. The drones had gotten inside somehow and detonated the ship's own reactor. Then the mines started appearing. Human ships released them as they passed. Tiny dark spheres that seemed to wink in and out of existence. Vortha's sensors couldn't track them properly. They'd appear on scanners and vanish, then reappear somewhere else entirely. His science officer was screaming something about quantum entanglement, about the minds existing in multiple locations simultaneously. A collective battleship flew through where sensors said empty space existed. The quantum mine materialized inside its shield perimeter and detonated. The battleship cracked in half, atmosphere venting in brilliant white streams. "Shields are useless against those weapons," someone shouted. But the worst were the hellbores. The human cruisers carried them, massive cannons that took 30 seconds to charge and lit up like miniature stars when firing. The first shot hit a collective heavy carrier dead center. Vorth expected to see shield flare, expected his carrier to shrug off the impact like it had shrugged off thousands of attacks before. Instead, the beam went straight through the shields like they weren't even there, through 3 feet of reinforced armor plating, through 17 decks of the ship. It kept going, boring a perfectly circular hole from bow to stern, and everything that hole touched simply ceased to exist. The carrier died in seconds, secondary explosions rippling along its length as vital systems failed. "How?" Vorth's voice cracked. "How are they penetrating our shields?" Nobody had an answer. The collective shield technology had been perfected over millennia. Nothing should bypass it. But somehow, humanity had found a way. The battle dissolved into chaos. Human ships fought like nothing in the collective's combat databases. They had no formation, no predictable patterns. They swarmed and separated, attacked from impossible angles, used their own destroyed vessels as cover. And when they took damage, they didn't retreat to safety. Vorth watched in horror as a human destroyer, its entire port side torn open and venting atmosphere, accelerated directly into a collective cruiser. At the last second, the destroyer's reactor went critical. The explosion consumed both ships and damaged 3 others nearby. "They're using suicide attacks," his second officer said, voice rising in panic. But it wasn't mindless suicide. Every human ship that died took at least 2 collective vessels with it. They calculated their deaths, weaponized their own destruction, turned losing into a tactical advantage. A damaged human frigate, limping through space with only 1 engine, fired cables at a passing collective destroyer. The cables attached and held. The frigate couldn't win a fight, but it could drag the destroyer out of formation. Both ships tumbled through space together until a human battleship had a clear shot and destroyed them both. Wreckage became weapons. Disabled human ships used their last power to orient themselves, creating obstacles that disrupted collective formations. Dead hulks were positioned deliberately, forcing Vorth's fleet to maneuver around them, breaking their perfect geometric patterns. Admiral Emily Grant's face appeared on every screen again, broadcast from her flagship. Behind her, Vorth could see crew members working calmly. No panic despite the carnage outside. "You're wondering how we're doing this," she said. "You're wondering how a primitive species is killing your advanced fleet. The answer is simple, Commander. You judged us by our technology and found us wanting. That was your mistake." An explosion lit up space behind her ship. She didn't even flinch. "You should have judged us by our history. We've been fighting each other for 10,000 years. We've survived ice ages and plagues. We built nuclear weapons and pointed them at ourselves. We fought wars that killed millions and learned from every single death. You're not facing a young species, Vorth. You're facing survivors. You're facing a species that has turned warfare into an art form." Another human ship rammed a collective dreadnought, both vessels disappearing in a ball of fire. "Every tactic we're using, we learned fighting ourselves. Every weapon, we designed anticipating enemies who could think and adapt. You fight by the rules of galactic warfare. We fight to win, no matter the cost." Vorth's tactical display was turning red. He lost 1,000 ships in 30 minutes. His formations were broken. His crews were panicking. And the humans just kept coming, wave after wave of black warships that seemed to multiply in the darkness. "All ships," he transmitted, voice hollow. "Fall back to Rally Point Gamma. Retreat and regroup." For the first time in collective history, they were running from a battle, and the humans pursued, howling for blood. The collective fleet retreated to the outer system, trying to regroup near Jupiter's orbit. Vorth needed time to analyze what had gone wrong, to understand these impossible humans. But time was something the Black Armada wouldn't give him. Within hours of the first battle, human salvage teams were already picking through the wreckage. They weren't just recovering their own dead. They were hauling damaged collective ships back to their hidden facilities, ships that were still mostly intact, still full of technology that should have taken decades to understand. Vorth's engineers had always believed their technology was too complex for primitive species to comprehend. Collective ships use quantum processors, multidimensional energy matrices, shield harmonics that required mathematics most species hadn't even discovered yet. It should have been impossible for humans to make sense of it. 3 days later, human ships appeared with modified collective shields. Impossible, Vorth said, staring at his tactical display. Those ships are using our own shield frequency. They couldn't have reverse engineered that in 3 days. But they had. Human engineers, it turned out, were terrifyingly good at taking things apart and understanding how they worked. They'd been doing it for centuries, stealing technology from each other during their endless wars. They called it rapid field adaptation, and they perfected it. A week into the battle, human vessels started using weapons that directly countered collective defenses, energy dampeners that disrupted the crystalline hull structures, resonance bombs that made collective shields tear themselves apart, targeting systems that predicted collective movement patterns with uncanny accuracy. These weren't weapons developed in a week. These were weapons that had been designed, tested, and manufactured over years. Weapons built specifically to fight the collective. The horrible truth crashed into Vorth's mind like a physical blow. Humanity had been preparing for this war since the moment they'd learned the collective existed. 60 years ago, when human ships first ventured beyond their solar system and made contact with the wider galaxy, they'd asked questions. They'd learned about the collective's reputation. They'd studied every species that had been conquered, and then they'd started building. Not building defenses, building an armada designed specifically to kill collective ships. Every weapon in the Black Armada had been engineered with collective technology in mind. The Hellbores weren't general-purpose weapons. They were shield penetrators designed for crystalline-based defensive systems. The quantum mines were built to exploit the specific dimensional frequencies the collective used. Humanity had spent 60 years preparing to fight this exact enemy. They knew we'd come, Vorth whispered. They knew, and they waited. His second officer looked pale. Sir, we're receiving reports from the inner colonies. Human forces have broken through our perimeter. They're not pursuing our fleet. They're heading outward. Outward? Toward what? Toward collective space, sir. Commander Jack Hayes led the human vanguard, a fleet of 5,000 ships that had punched through collective lines like they weren't even there. His flagship, the Relentless, was broadcasting a message on all frequencies as it raced toward the first collective territory. People of the Sovereign Collective, Hayes announced, his voice calm but carrying an edge of steel. We are the Human Defense Fleet. For 300 years, your leaders have conquered peaceful species and forced them into submission. You came to Earth expecting the same. You were wrong. His ships entered the Tau Ceti system, a former independent world the Collective had absorbed 80 years ago. The Collective garrison there moved to intercept, but the human ships tore through them in minutes. You came to conquer Earth, Hayes continued. We're coming to free your victims. Every world you've enslaved, every species you've subjugated, every civilization you've crushed under your rule, we're offering them a choice you never gave them. Freedom. The message rippled across collective space like a shockwave. The 47 conquered species, silent for so long under collective rule, began to hear hope for the first time in generations. Back at Jupiter, Vorth's fleet was dying, not in one massive battle, but in 100 small engagements as human forces hunted down every ship that tried to escape. His crews were exhausted, demoralized, watching their supposedly invincible fleet get torn apart by a species they thought primitive. 2 weeks after the invasion began, Vorth had lost 6,000 ships, 60% of his entire invasion force, dead or captured or fleeing into deep space. The greatest military disaster in collective history, and it was all his fault for underestimating humanity. His communication officer approached hesitantly. "Commander, the Council is demanding a status report." "Tell them we've lost," Vorath said quietly. "Sir, tell them we've lost. Tell them I'm requesting immediate peace negotiations. Tell them that if we don't surrender now, the humans will follow us home and burn our core worlds to ash." The officer swallowed hard. "The Council won't accept surrender, sir. The Collective has never surrendered." Vorath looked at the tactical display, at the red icons representing destroyed ships, at the advancing blue markers, showing human forces pushing deeper into Collective territory. "Then the Collective will learn something new today," he said. "Get me a secure channel to Admiral Emily Grant. It's time to end this before humanity decides that freeing our victims isn't enough. Before they decide that the only way to ensure galactic peace is to eliminate us entirely." The officer nodded and hurried away. Vorath sat alone in his command chamber, the weight of defeat crushing down on him. They had thought themselves the apex of galactic civilization. They had thought themselves unbeatable. They had thought humanity was just another primitive species, to be absorbed. They had been wrong about everything. The shuttle bay doors of the Indomitable opened to receive Commander Vorath, no longer as a diplomatic guest, but as a prisoner of war. He stepped out without his ceremonial armor, stripped of his rank insignia, surrounded by human guards who watched him with cold eyes. The great commander of the Sovereign Collective, who had conquered dozens of worlds, now walked through enemy corridors with his head down. Admiral Emily Grant waited for him in her ready room. She stood by a large window overlooking the scarred battlefield, debris from thousands of destroyed ships still floating in the darkness. When Vorath entered, she didn't turn immediately. She let him stand there, let him see what remained of his fleet. 2 weeks, she said finally. "That's how long your invasion lasted. The Collective has been conquering worlds for 3 centuries, and it took us 2 weeks to break you." Vorath said nothing. What could he say? The facts spoke for themselves. Emily turned to face him. She looked tired. There were dark circles under her eyes, and her uniform was wrinkled. This victory had cost her, too. "Sit," she said, gesturing to a chair. He sat. For a long moment, they studied each other in silence. "I need to understand something," Vorath said quietly. "We offered you a peaceful solution. Surrender, and your species would have lived. Yes, under our rule, but alive. Your cities would have stood. Your children would have grown up. Instead, you chose war. You lost 200,000 people in 2 weeks. Why? Why fight so hard when negotiation was possible?" Emily walked to the wall behind her desk. She pressed a button, and the wall lit up with names. Thousands upon thousands of names, scrolling slowly upward in neat columns. Each name glowed softly in the dim light. 200,736, she said. "That's the exact count. Every person who died defending Earth. Every pilot who rammed their ship into yours. Every Marine who held the line on our orbital stations. Every engineer who worked until they collapsed. Every medic who died trying to save wounded crew." Vorath looked at the names scrolling past. So many names. "Come here," Emily said. He stood and approached the wall. Up close, he could see more than just names. Each entry had a small photograph, a hometown, an age. He saw young faces and old ones, men and women, people from every corner of Earth. "Lieutenant David Chun," Emily read, pointing to one name, 23 years old. "He piloted a damaged fighter into your dreadnought's engine core. He had a daughter who was 2 years old." She pointed to another, Captain Patricia Rodriguez, 41. She stayed on her exploding station to evacuate her crew. Her husband was waiting for her on Earth. Vorath felt something unfamiliar. Shame. "Every human on this ship lost someone," Emily continued, her voice steady but carrying an edge of steel. "A friend, a family member, a loved one. We all paid the price for our freedom. And you asked me why we didn't negotiate." She turned to face him directly. "Because we learned something a long time ago. Commander, subjugation is a slower death than war. You would have taken our weapons, controlled our governments, decided our future. You would have turned humanity into pets, into servants, into a conquered people who forgot what freedom meant. We've seen it happen to 47 other species. We watched them lose everything that made them who they were. Emily walked back to the window. Every human knows someone who died fighting for freedom. We've been doing it for 10,000 years. Fighting tyrants, fighting oppressors, fighting anyone who tried to take away our right to choose our own path. You thought you were different because you came from the stars. You weren't. You were just another conqueror, and we've had plenty of practice dealing with those. She pulled up a star map on her display. Red markers showed collective core worlds. Blue markers showed human fleets already in position. Here are Earth's terms, she said. Simple and non-negotiable. First, you will dismantle your subjugation system. Every ship designed for a planetary invasion, every weapon designed to threaten worlds, you'll destroy them under human supervision. Vortha's eyes widened. The Council will never. Second, Emily continued, ignoring him, all 47 conquered species will be offered immediate independence. You will withdraw your occupation forces, return stolen resources, and allow them to rebuild without interference. That would collapse our entire civilization, Vorth protested. Should have thought of that before you built your civilization on slavery, Emily replied coldly. Third, the collective will maintain diplomatic relations only. No military presence beyond your original borders. No expansion. No conquest. You will learn to coexist peacefully with your neighbors, or you will cease to exist at all. She zoomed the display to show collective home worlds. Commander Jack Hayes' fleet are already entering your core territory. One word from me, and they don't stop. They keep going until the collective is a memory. The choice is yours. Accept these terms or face extinction. Vorth sat heavily. He thought of his home world, his family, billions of lives depending on his answer. The Council will agree, he said quietly. Smart choice. Over following months, the Black Armada supervised the dismantling of collective power. Conquered species celebrated their freedom. Some chose to remain friendly with their former masters. Others swore they'd never forget what had been done to them. The galaxy watched and learned. The Black Armada eventually returned to human space, disappearing back into the shadows they'd emerged from. Earth's moon sealed itself once more. The civilian disguises went back up. To outside observers, humanity returned to being a small, peaceful species with just a few thousand visible ships. But everyone knew the truth now. Humanity would never submit. They had spent 10,000 years learning one crucial lesson. Sometimes the only path to lasting peace was through overwhelming, undeniable force. They had proven they would rather burn the galaxy than bow to tyrants. The warning spread across every civilized world. Leave Earth alone. Leave humanity alone. They look peaceful, but beneath that surface lies something ancient and terrible. They are survivors. They are fighters. And they never, ever forget a threat. The galaxy had been warned.